I used to believe that love was a fortress. Not the kind with stone walls and drawbridges you see in storybooks, but something quieter, more enduring. A structure built not of mortar and rock, but of shared mornings. Inside jokes whispered in crowded rooms. The weight of a hand resting on your thigh during a long car ride. My marriage to Clara felt like that kind of fortress. Solid. Unbreachable. For 12 years, I walked its halls with the easy confidence of a man who knew every creak in the floorboard, every patch of sunlight that fell across the kitchen table at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I never imagined I'd one day stand inside those same walls and feel the ground dissolve beneath my feet. It began, as these things often do, not with a bang, but with a whisper. A shift in the atmosphere so subtle I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Clara had always been a creature of light. Her laughter filled a room like music spilling from an open window. She'd hum while making coffee, dance barefoot while chopping vegetables, leave little notes tucked into my lunch bag with doodles of smiling suns. Lately, though, a quietness had settled over her. Not a peaceful quiet, more like the hush that falls after a storm has passed through, leaving everything damp and fragile. She'd stare out the window during dinner, her fork hovering midway to her mouth, lost in a thought she wouldn't share when I asked, "Penny for your thoughts?" She'd just smile, a lovely, practiced thing that didn't quite reach her eyes, and say, "Nothing, just tired." I told myself it was work. She'd taken on a big project at the architecture firm, late nights and weekend calls. I told myself it was the season, the gray, persistent drizzle of November seeping into our bones. I told myself a lot of things because the alternative, that something was wrong in the one place I believed was safe, felt impossible to consider. Then there were the small absences. Not physical ones, though those happened too. Sudden errands on her way home, a forgotten grocery list requiring a second trip out. It was the absences of attention. The way her phone, once left carelessly on the counter while she cooked, now traveled with her like a secret companion. Face down on the couch cushion beside her, buzzing with a vibration she'd silence with a quick, almost furtive tap of her thumb. The way she'd stopped initiating the slow, sleepy conversations we used to have in bed before sleep took us. The ones about nothing and everything, the fabric of our days woven together thread by thread. One Tuesday, I came home early. A meeting had been canceled, and I'd surprised her with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I let myself in with my key, calling her name softly so as not to startle her. The house was silent. I found her in the study, sitting at her desk, her back to me. She was perfectly still, not typing, not reading, just staring at the blank screen of her laptop. Her shoulders were tense, a posture I'd never associated with my wife, who carried herself with an easy, fluid grace. "Clara?" I said gently. She jumped as if electrocuted, her hand flying to her chest. "Mark, you scared me." She swiveled the chair around, forcing a smile that looked painted on. "I didn't hear you come in. I got us pad thai," I said, holding up the bag. "Extra basil." Her eyes flickered past me toward the doorway, a tiny, involuntary glance. That's wonderful. Just give me a sec to save this thing." She turned back to the laptop, her fingers tapping rapidly on keys that, I suspected, weren't actually connected to any document. After a moment, she closed the lid with a soft click and stood, smoothing her sweater. "Smells amazing." We ate at the kitchen table, the steam from the cartons fogging the windows. I told her about my canceled meeting, about the funny thing my colleague had said. She listened, nodded, made the appropriate sounds. But her eyes kept drifting to the hallway leading to the study, and once, when her phone buzzed on the table between us, she snatched it up so quickly the container of rice rattled. She read the screen, her expression unreadable, then typed a single-word reply with her thumb before silencing it again. "Everything okay?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "Fine," she said too brightly. "Just Daniel. You know how he is, always last minute about the cabin trip. Daniel, our best friend since college. The groomsman at our wedding. The man who'd held my hand in the hospital waiting room when Clara gave birth to our daughter, Lily, before the complications took her from us at just 3 days old. a loss that had carved canyons into both our souls, but somehow, miraculously, had not separated us. Daniel had been our anchor then. He'd brought meals, sat with us in silence, reminded us how to breathe when the grief felt like drowning. He was family. The thought of him being anything else was unthinkable, absurd. And yet, that night, after Clara fell into a sleep that seemed more like exhaustion than rest, I lay awake listening to the rhythm of her breathing. It was a sound I knew as well as my own heartbeat. But tonight it felt foreign. I watched the faint moonlight trace the curve of her shoulder beneath the sheets, and a cold, sharp fear pricked at the base of my throat. What if the fortress has a crack you can't see? The thought arrived unbidden, unwelcome. I pushed it away, ashamed of myself for even considering it. This was Clara, my Clara, the woman who still kissed me goodbye every morning, who remembered how I took my coffee, who had held me together when I thought I'd shatter completely after Lily died. I was being paranoid, stupid. The weight of work, of grief that never truly leaves, was making me imagine shadows where there was only light. I resolved to be better, to be more present, to pull us back toward each other. The next weekend, I planned a picnic. I made her favorite sandwiches, packed a blanket, drove us to the overlook where we'd gotten engaged. A place overlooking the valley, all rolling green hills and distant, hazy mountains. It was a perfect autumn day, crisp air carrying the scent of wood smoke and decaying leaves. I spread the blanket, opened the wine, and watched her as she gazed out at the view. For a moment, she looked like herself again, softened, peaceful. I reached for her hand. She let me take it, but her fingers were limp in mine. After a minute, she pulled away gently to adjust her scarf. "Remember when we came here after the ultrasound?" I asked softly. "When we found out about Lily, you were so happy. You kept touching your stomach like you were making sure she was still there." Clara's face tightened almost imperceptibly. She looked down at her hands. "I remember. We were going to name her after your grandmother," I continued, the memory a bittersweet ache in my chest. Clara rose. A single tear traced a path down her cheek. She swiped it away quickly. "Don't, Mark. Don't what? Don't make it harder." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Make what harder?" She shook her head, refusing to meet my eyes. "Nothing. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well." She stood abruptly, brushing grass from her jeans. "Can we go home?" The drive back was silent. The fortress walls, I realized with a sickening lurch, weren't just cracked. Something was moving inside them, something I couldn't see. The discovery didn't come with drama. No slammed doors, no shouted accusations, no phone left unlocked with damning texts glowing on the screen. It came quietly, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, while I was searching for a book. Clara had mentioned wanting to reread The Secret Garden. Something about finding comfort in its themes of hidden things coming back to life. I knew she kept her childhood favorites in the old cedar chest at the foot of our bed, the one her grandfather had made. I knelt on the floor, lifting the heavy lid. The familiar scent of aged wood and dried lavender washed over me. Beneath a stack of yellowed paperbacks, my fingers brushed against something that wasn't a book. A small, cloth-bound journal I'd never seen before. It was slim, deep blue, with a faded silver clasp. Curiosity, that innocent-seeming serpent, coiled in my gut. This wasn't Clara's usual journal, the one she kept on her nightstand for dreams and grocery lists. This felt hidden, deliberately placed beneath layers of other things. My heart began a slow, heavy thud against my ribs. "Don't," a voice inside me warned. "This is her private space. You don't get to look." But the fear I'd been carrying for weeks, the quiet dread that had become my constant companion, was louder. What if it was nothing? Just an old diary from college. I could put it back, no one would ever know. But what if it was something else? What if it held the answer to the hollow space that had grown between us? My hands trembled as I unfastened the clasp. The first page wasn't a diary entry. It was a letter, dated 3 months ago, addressed to Daniel. "My dearest Daniel, I'm writing this because I can't say the words out loud. Not yet, maybe not ever. But my heart is so full of them they threaten to spill out every time I look at you across the dinner table. Every time Mark claps you on the shoulder like you're his brother. And all I can think is, he has no idea. He has no idea that when you hand me the salt, your fingers brush mine on purpose. He has no idea that the joke you told last Tuesday wasn't just funny. It was ours, a secret coded in the way you looked at me afterward. He has no idea that I lie in bed next to him at night and trace the shape of your smile on the ceiling. I never meant for this to happen. How do you explain a landslide? One moment the ground is solid beneath your feet. The next, everything is shifting, tumbling, and you're falling without wanting to fall. It started with a look. Just a look across a crowded room at Sarah's party. A look that said, I see you. I see the tiredness behind your eyes. The grief you carry for Lily that Mark tries so hard to fix but can't. I see the woman you were before life carved its marks into you. And in that look I felt known. Truly known. Mark loves me. I know he does. His love is a warm, steady room. Safe, familiar. Filled with the scent of coffee and old books. But your love feels like standing on the edge of a cliff with the wind whipping through your hair. It's terrifying and exhilarating all at once. It makes me feel alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. I hate myself for this. I hate that I'm betraying the two people I love most in this world. Mark doesn't deserve this. He's a good man, kind man. He still cries sometimes when he hears our song on the radio. He still sets a place for Lily at her birthday dinner every year. How can I do this to him? How can I trade his steady, faithful love for this beautiful, terrible secret? But then I see you, and the guilt recedes like a tide, leaving only this aching, undeniable truth. I am in love with you. Yours always, Clara. The words blurred. The room tilted. I had to press a hand against the bed frame to keep from falling over. My breath came in shallow gasps, as if I'd been punched in the solar plexus. Daniel, the man who'd held Clara's hand during her second trimester ultrasound, who'd cried with us when the doctor said the words, incompatible with life. The man who'd helped me dig the small, heartbreaking grave in the corner of our property for our daughter's ashes. I turned the page with numb fingers. Another letter, dated 6 weeks ago. Daniel, Mark asked me today if I was happy. Just like that, over scrambled eggs. Are you happy, Clara? And I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the fear in his eyes. He knows, or he suspects. And I lied to his face. I said, of course I am. And I kissed his cheek and went to rinse my plate so he wouldn't see my tears. The guilt is a stone in my stomach now, heavy and cold. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I told you we should stop. After the gallery opening, when we stood on that balcony and you kissed me, really kissed me, for the first time I pulled away and said it was wrong. And you agreed. You said, it is wrong. But it doesn't feel wrong when I'm with you. And that's the problem, isn't it? It doesn't feel wrong. It feels like coming home to a house I never knew I'd been missing. I keep thinking about Lily, not the grief of losing her, but the hope we had when she was growing inside me. The way Mark would talk to my belly every night. The way we painted the nursery that soft yellow color she would have loved. We built a future around her, and when she was gone, we built a different future around the memory of her. A quieter future, careful one. And somewhere along the way, I think we stopped building anything new together. We just maintained the ruins. You make me want to build again, even if it's on stolen ground, even if it's a house made of sand. I'm so tired of lying. See, letter after letter, 7 in total, all unsent, all pouring out a love that was not for me. Each one a precise, surgical cut deeper into my soul. She wrote of stolen moments, a coffee after work that stretched into 2 hours, a business trip to Portland that was actually a weekend in a hotel overlooking the river, the way Daniel's hand felt on the small of her back when they thought no one was looking. She wrote of her love for me with a tenderness that made the betrayal cut even deeper. Mark's love is my anchor, she wrote in one. But anchors hold you in place. Sometimes I feel like I'm drowning in the stillness. She wrote of her shame, her confusion, her inability to stop even as she knew it was destroying everything. I sat on the floor for what felt like hours, the journal heavy in my lap, the rain streaking the windows like tears. The world I knew, the solid, sunlit world of our marriage, had not just cracked. It had evaporated. In its place was a landscape of devastating clarity. Every quiet moment, every distracted glance, every unexplained absence now snapped into focus, each one a piece of evidence in a case I hadn't known was being built against my own life. The fortress wasn't just breached. It had been hollowed out from the inside while I slept peacefully within its walls, trusting the very hands that were dismantling it. I didn't confront her that night, or the next morning. When she came downstairs, humming softly, a new habit, I realized with a fresh wave of nausea. She only hummed when she was happy, truly happy. I made her coffee just the way she liked it. 2 sugars, a splash of oat milk. I kissed her cheek. I told her I loved her. And I did. God help me, I still did. That was the most confusing, most agonizing part of all. The love hadn't vanished with the discovery. It was still there, tangled up with the betrayal, the rage, the grief. A monstrous knot I couldn't begin to untie. How do you stop loving someone who has become the architecture of your life? How do you tear down the walls when you're still living inside the house? Instead of speaking the words that burned in my throat, I know. I found your letters. How could you? I went to the study. I pulled out a fresh notebook, plain, unlined paper, the kind I used for drafting architectural sketches. I uncapped a fountain pen, the one Clara had given me for our 10th anniversary, its weight familiar and comforting in my hand. And I began to write, not to her, not yet, but for her. A letter I knew, even as I formed the first letters on the page, I would never send. Day 1. The pen feels alien in my hand tonight. Heavy, like it's made of lead instead of brass. I keep expecting Clara to walk in, to rest her chin on my shoulder and ask what I'm working on so late. She won't, of course. She's already asleep down the hall, in our bed. The bed where she's been lying next to me for 12 years while dreaming of another man's touch. I don't know why I'm doing this. Writing to you, Clara, when I can't even look at you without feeling like I'm choking on glass. Maybe because words are all I have left. The words you wrote in that blue journal, they're branded onto my mind now. I can recite them. Your love feels like standing on the edge of a cliff. Mark's love is a warm, steady room. A room, not a home, just a room. Safe, boring, stifling. Do you know what it's like to read that? To have the foundation of your entire adult life reduced to a steady room, while someone else gets to be the wind on the cliff edge? I built that room, Clara. I chose every piece of furniture. I hung the pictures. I kept the fire lit on cold nights. I thought we were building a home together. I guess I was the only one holding the blueprint. I keep replaying moments, trying to find the exact second the ground shifted. Was it after Lily died? Did her loss create a fault line between us that I was too blind to see? I thought we were grieving together. I thought we were holding each other up. But maybe I was just holding on to you while you were already drifting away. Maybe my grief was an anchor you needed to cut loose to stay afloat. I'm so angry. Not the shouting kind of anger, the kind that makes you want to throw things or punch walls. YouTube's guidelines or not, I wouldn't do that. Violence solves nothing. This anger is colder. It lives in my bones. It's in the way my hand shakes when I pour my coffee. It's in the silence that has taken up residence in our house. A third occupant now, sitting between us at dinner, watching us pretend. But beneath the anger, God, beneath the anger is the hurt. A raw animal hurt that has no words. It's the memory of you, 6 months pregnant, your hand in mine as we walked through the park, you saying, however this turns out, we'll be okay, as long as we have each other. And I believed you. I believed us. Who were you talking to when you wrote those letters, Clara? The woman who made that promise to me? Or the woman who was already falling in love with my best friend? I don't expect an answer. I'm not even sure I want one. Some truths are too heavy to carry. I'll write again tomorrow. Not because I have hope, but because if I don't put these words somewhere, they'll rot inside me. Day 2. I watched you today. Not in a creepy way, I'd never crossed that line. But I observed, like an architect studying a structure he once thought was sound, looking for the stress fractures. You were making tea in the kitchen, the afternoon sun catching the gold in your hair. You hummed that tune again, the one you've been humming lately, and for a second, just a second, your face softened into a smile that had nothing to do with the room, with me, with anything in this house. It was a private smile, a secret smile, and I knew, with a certainty that stole the air from my lungs, that you were thinking of him, of Daniel. That smile was for him, and the worst part? It was beautiful. You looked light, unburdened, the way you used to look before Lily got sick, before the world went gray. And that's what twists the knife deeper. He makes you happy, or he makes you feel happy. There's a difference, I think. One is sustainable. The other is a fire that burns bright but consumes everything in its path. I wonder if you feel it, the distance I'm maintaining. Do you sense the wall I've built between us? Or are you so wrapped up in your secret world with Daniel that you don't notice the man sleeping beside you has already begun to disappear? Day 5. I went for a long walk today. Just walked, with no destination. Past the park where we pushed Lily's empty stroller after she died. A ritual of grief we clung to for months. Past the coffee shop where we had our first date. Past the hardware store where we bought paint for the nursery. Everywhere I looked, our life was written on the landscape. A palimpsest of memories, now stained with this new, terrible knowledge. The park bench where we sat holding hands isn't just a bench anymore. It's the place where you first started pulling away, though I didn't know it at the time. The coffee shop isn't just where we fell in love. It's where the foundation for this betrayal was unknowingly laid. Every laugh, every shared dream, every promise becoming a brick in a wall that would eventually trap me. I thought about forgiveness today. Not whether I can forgive you, that feels impossible right now, a mountain too high to climb, but whether forgiveness is even the point. Is this about forgiveness? Or is it about truth? About whether a relationship built on a lie can ever be rebuilt on honesty? You didn't just have an affair, Clara. You built a parallel universe inside our marriage. For months, maybe longer, you lived two lives. The life with me, the dinners, the chores, the quiet evenings watching TV, and the secret life with him. The letters, the stolen moments, the dreams of a future that didn't include me. Which life felt more real to you? When you kissed me goodnight, were you already composing your next letter to Daniel in your head? I don't ask these questions to punish you. I ask them because I need to understand. Not to excuse what you did. I could never excuse it, but to comprehend how the woman I married, the woman who held my hand through the darkest night of my life, could become someone capable of this. Maybe that's the real betrayal. Not the affair itself, but the erasure of the person I thought you were. I'm mourning two losses now. The loss of my marriage, and the loss of the woman I believed I married. Day 6. I almost told you today. We were washing dishes side by side, the way we always do, me rinsing, you loading the dishwasher. Your hand brushed mine under the warm water, and for a second, it was like old times. A simple, domestic moment of connection. And the words rose in my throat like bile. I know. I found the letters. I know about Daniel. I opened my mouth. I could feel the shape of the confession forming on my tongue. But then you smiled at me. A real smile this time, tired but genuine, and said, "Remember when we used to have dance parties in this kitchen? Just you and me. No music even, just swaying. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't shatter that moment. I couldn't be the one to extinguish that fragile light in your eyes. So I smiled back. I said, I remember. And I kept rinsing plates. Why did I stop myself? Fear mostly. Fear of the aftermath. Fear of the look on your face when the secret is out. The shame, the panic, the lies that would surely follow. Fear of the silence that would descend after the shouting stopped. Fear of losing you completely. But also, a tiny, shameful part of me didn't want to know the details. Didn't want to hear you say his name in that context. Didn't want to picture the places, the moments, the intimacies. Ignorance isn't bliss. It's a slow poison. But sometimes the antidote is more painful than the disease. So I stay silent. I continue this charade. And I write. These words are my witness, my testimony. If I never speak the truth aloud, at least it will exist here on these pages. At least I will have been honest with myself. Day 7. This is the last entry. I can feel it. Something has shifted inside me over these 7 days of writing. The raw, bleeding wound hasn't healed. It may never fully heal, but it has begun to scab over. The screaming inside has quieted to a low, steady hum. I can think without immediately drowning in rage or grief. I've been asking myself what I want. Not what I should want, what a good husband would want, what society expects, but what Mark truly wants. And the answer isn't simple. Part of me wants to fight for us, to sit you down and say, we need help, we need counseling, we need to tear this thing apart and see if there's anything left worth saving. Because I do love you, Clara. That hasn't changed. Love isn't a switch you flip off. It's a deep-rooted tree. You can hack at its branches, poison its soil, but the roots remain, stubborn and alive. But another part of me, the part that has been reading your words for a week, knows that some betrayals change the DNA of a relationship. You can't unknow what I now know. You can't unfeel the distance that has grown between us. Even if we stayed together, even if you ended things with Daniel tomorrow, would I ever look at you and not see the woman who wrote those letters? Would you ever look at me and not see the man you betrayed? And what about Daniel? What role does he play in whatever comes next? Are you in love with him? Or were you just in love with the idea of being desired again? With feeling alive after so much death? I don't know. And I'm not sure I want to know. Today, I took the blue journal and placed it back in the cedar chest, exactly where I found it. I didn't hide it better. I didn't leave it out as a trap. I just put it back. A silent acknowledgement. I know. The secret is no longer yours alone. I won't confront you with the letters. I won't make a dramatic scene. That's not who I am. But I also can't continue as we are, this polite, hollow performance of a marriage. The silence between us has become too loud to ignore. Tomorrow I will ask you to talk. Not about the letters. Not about Daniel. But about us. About the quietness that settled over our home long before any affair began. About the grief we never fully processed. About whether we both still want to build something together, or if we've been maintaining ruins for too long. I don't know what your answer will be. I don't know if there's a future for us. But I know this. I will not live a lie. Not for one more day. This letter, this unsent, unread testament to my pain, has been my way of bearing witness to my own heartbreak. It has been my anchor in the storm. And now, having written my truth, I am ready to face whatever truth you have to offer. I love you, Clara. I think I always will. But love isn't always enough. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the person you love, is to let go. I closed the notebook. The house was quiet except for the soft tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. A sound that had once been comforting, a marker of time's gentle passage. Now it felt like a countdown. I didn't send the letter. I never intended to. Some truths aren't meant to be delivered. They're meant to be lived. Writing it had been the work, the slow, painful excavation of my own heart. The words on the page were not a weapon to be thrown at Clara, but a map of the territory I'd been forced to cross. They were proof that I had survived the journey, even if I was forever changed by it. The next evening, after dinner, I took Clara's hands in mine. They were warm, familiar. I looked into her eyes, the eyes I'd fallen in love with 20 years ago, and I saw the fear there. She knew. Not that I'd found the letters, perhaps, but that something had shifted. That the fragile peace we'd been maintaining was over. Clara, I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my soul. We need to talk. And we did. Not about the letters. Not about Daniel by name. But about the silence. About the distance. About the unspoken grief for Lily that had become a wall between us. She cried great, heaving sobs that shook her whole body. She didn't confess everything that night. That would come later, in fragments, over weeks of painful conversations with a therapist sitting between us. But she admitted the essential truth. She had been lost. She had sought connection in the wrong place. She was sorry, not just for the affair, but for letting our marriage wither while she looked elsewhere for life. We didn't stay together. Not in the way we had been. That marriage, the one built on the illusion of unbreachable trust, was gone. But something else began to grow in its place. Not a romance, not at first. Something more fragile and perhaps more honest. A commitment to truth. A willingness to sit in the wreckage without looking away. It's been 2 years now. Clara and I live in separate apartments, a few blocks apart. We share custody of the dog we adopted after Lily died. A gentle, dopey golden retriever named Barnaby, who has no idea his humans' lives were once shattered. We have coffee sometimes. We talk. The conversations are different now. Lighter in some ways, heavier in others. There's no pretending, no performance. Just two people who loved each other deeply, hurt each other profoundly, and are trying, slowly, to find a new way to care for one another without the weight of a broken promise. Daniel is out of the picture. He moved to another state. I don't know if it was guilt or if Clara simply realized that the cliff edge, thrilling as it may be, isn't a place you can build a life. Some loves are meant to be brief, brilliant fires. Others, the steady, warm room kind, are meant to keep you alive through long winters. She had confused one for the other. We both had. I still have the notebook. I take it out sometimes, not to reopen the wounds, but to remember the man I was before I knew how much he could endure. The man who believed love was a fortress. I know better now. Love isn't a fortress. Fortresses can be breached, dismantled, left as ruins. Love is more like water, can be still and deep, a lake reflecting the sky. It can rage and flood, destroying everything in its path. It can seep into cracks and, over time, wear away the hardest stone. And sometimes, after a great drought, it can find its way back, not to the same riverbed, but to a new course, shaped by the landscape of what was lost. I didn't send the letter, but in writing it, I sent myself a message I desperately needed to receive. You will survive this. You are more than this pain. Your story isn't over. And it wasn't. Still isn't. The ending isn't tidy. There's no grand reconciliation. No cinematic moment of forgiveness under a setting sun. There's just the slow, daily work of rebuilding a self that was shattered. Of learning to trust again, not blindly but wisely. Of understanding that the deepest betrayals often come not from malice, but from human frailty. From the desperate, misguided search for light in the long shadow of grief. I look out my window now at the same valley where I once proposed to Clara. The light is different in the late afternoon, softer, golden. I don't feel the sharp stab of loss I once did. The grief has settled into my bones, become a part of me, like the memory of a limb that's been gone for years but still aches in the rain. I am alone tonight, but I am not lonely. There's a difference. Loneliness is the absence of connection. Being alone is simply a fact. And in this aloneness, I have found something I didn't know I was missing. Myself. The man who existed before Mark and Clara. The man who is still here, still breathing, still capable of finding beauty in a sunset, comfort in a cup of tea, hope in a new day. The unsent letter was my anchor during the storm. But now the waters have calmed, and I am learning, slowly, to sail again. Not toward the shore I once knew, but toward whatever horizon awaits. The journey isn't over. It never really is. But I am no longer drowning. And for now, for today, that is enough.